life in both cities, but we are going to have
I can only speak from the Rust Belt. I'm kind of a Rust Belt guy.
All right, so you guys stay on that side, and CC and I'll stay on this side. You can weigh in on some football. Let's talk some football. After a disappointing loss in Week 2, the Cowboys sure looked good in a 28-17 win against Arizona in Arizona last night. Dak Prescott controlled the game, throwing 2 touchdowns and rushing for a third. And Ezekiel Elliott punctuated the win with a touchdown late in the fourth quarter. Head coach Jason Garrett talked about his quarterback's performance after the game.
And he just kept battling. He kept making good decisions. Obviously, he made some great plays out of the pocket. He made some big-time throws. But as much as anything else, he's got an amazing spirit. And it's contagious. And our players follow him. Not only our offensive players, but our entire team.
Not surprising. Jason Garrett is all in on Dak Prescott. The question that we've been asking all morning is, does Dak make the Cowboys better, or do the Cowboys make Dak better? What do you think, Moose?
I think it plays off of both sides of that question. When he talks about the spirit of Dak Prescott and how infectious it is throughout the locker room, I think that was one of the big reasons last year why the Tony Romo situation kind of dissolved itself towards the end. I think the decision was already made, and it wasn't about the potential. It was about what he created in that locker room. The older guys on that roster had this youthful shot of energy and excitement. He and Ezekiel together have really shifted the dynamic of that locker room, and I think that that's an important part right there. But I think they go hand in hand. I think he plays off the style that Jason wants to do with the strong running game, the play action, the boot, the zone reads, and all the different things that we see in the red zone. So I think it's a great fit for both.
And just a quick follow-up, the maturity of him to come off the loss that Dak Prescott came off last week. Hadn't had a loss like that in his professional career, and then to come back and be able to control the tempo of the game and not go crazy, not have the game of his life, be able to manage the game, come back after a tough first half, and then win. It says a lot about where he is, I think.
Response is the big word that we're hearing today. Yeah, we've seen it from teams or from players. What's the response going to be the following week? And I think Dak and Ezekiel responded very well last night.
And it's a team, they're still a young team that has not faced, Coach Mangini talked about, they haven't faced a lot of adversity. What Zeke faced off the field for his lack of effort on a couple different plays. But it's clear that this team is led by Zach and Zeke. Like, they lead this team. And this organization is going to go as these two players go. But, as you mentioned, as a leader, when you have a bunch of men, professional football players, and you have one guy that stands out, like his leadership, it's easy to see because we've seen so many phonies, and there's only a few great leaders. And especially when they're a quarterback, it just sticks out in the locker room, and it's easy to identify, and that's what you're talking about with Dallas in the organization. They identified last year, and that helped them with the Tony Romo and the processing of, oh, he's going to be a backup permanently.
It's always going to be difficult to separate quarterback from the pieces around him. Because even though it's the most important position in sports, you're relying on an offensive line being good. You're relying on your skill position guys being good. You're relying on your defense to a degree, getting some stops and not controlling time possession. But there is, so this is, speaking of hypotheticals. So my daughter's in 7th grade. She's in science class. They're doing a lot of experiments now, right? So you always need a control group. So in the NFL, I try to think of like, what's the control group? So I take Cincinnati Bengals. I think they have a quarterback who is almost exactly dead average. Like if there's 32 quarterbacks, he's somewhere 15, 16, 17. I look at the talent on their roster. I think it's just about dead average, 15, 16, 17. So that's as good of a control group as we could get in the NFL. And I ask myself, if you flipped Dak and Dalton, what happens to these two teams? I think Cincinnati looks like one of the better teams in the AFC, and I think Dallas looks a lot closer to how it was the last few years with Romo. They're okay. They're not going to be awful. They're going to be an 8, 9, 10, 8, maybe in a good year, 10 wins. I really believe, and I haven't seen any evidence to the contrary, that Dak is a special player. And people, what?
I don't know about that.
You haven't seen what? That Dak's a special player?
Yeah, absolutely.
No, I said I believe he's a special player.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No. I said I believe he's a special player. I've seen no evidence to the contrary. Maybe I misspoke. I've seen no evidence that he's not a special player. Like I believe every time we set a new bar for him to clear, to me he clears it. Whether it was I know they lost the playoff game.
Yeah, we thought Andrew Luck was a special player. but they didn't put an offensive line in front of them. See, Nick, this is what you don't understand about football, all right? There is no individual that can stand out without a group. J.J. Watt, I don't care how good he is, they don't have pass coverage in the back. Like, it is the ultimate team sport. Offensively, defensively, if you have poor special teams, if the offense starts on the long field, like, this becomes very difficult. Last year, Dak, they were 23rd in passing offense, all right? Rushing, they were second in rushing, all right? You think they were second in rushing because of Dak?
No.
Okay, so
I think he had probably a small part to do
they were
with it,
23rd in passing, all right? They're 18th in passing now. They're not even in the top half of the league in passing. So you can't say that Dak is not benefiting from these other parts around him because their passing numbers are not spectacular.
CC, I conceded off the top, of course he's benefiting from it, but I think the rest of the team's benefiting from him more. I think the numbers last year are misleading.
I guarantee you Andy Dalton would be a lot better if he was in Dallas.
Yes.
The Bengals,
Because
the Bengals have better skill position players on the outside than Dallas.
they don't have a better offensive line.
They got a damn good offensive line.
Okay, but what? Go ahead.
No,
I'm not going to say that.
No, I think go ahead, Moose.
This might be one of the best
Please
groupings that we've ever seen.
begging you.
No. This is one of the best groupings we've ever seen, that offensive line in the last 10 or 15 years. They are that dominant. They are that special. And when you put a quarterback behind that, it gives them the security that you don't understand. And you're not appropriating that Andy Dalton doesn't have. All right? Because the skill level, it's marginal when you're playing because they make the game easier. The game is easier for Dak. I'm not trying to take away from his skill, but I'm just trying to tell you, you need to recognize great teammates and great units make the game easier for certain positions.
Supporting casts are huge for a quarterback, but I think we talk about response. The response of Dallas's offensive line last night was one of the big things that everybody wanted to see too, because I think you're talking about this theory that Denver put the blueprint out there, stack the box, stuff the run. Dak is not at that stage of his career yet to carry this team on his own. But I think he proved a lot of people wrong last night. There were some great throws last night. Yes. I like your control group theory. I really do, because I come from a science and math background, but I'm going to throw one in there. How about Jared Goff? Okay, because that's not changing anything but the philosophy and the mentality of the coaching staff and the mentorship that exists with Sean McVay and Jared Goff. I mean, we're watching Jared Goff. Unbelievable. And that's not, yeah, he's got Robert Woods and he's got Sammy Watkins on the outside, so they add that, but it did something to him mentally and from a confidence standpoint to have a guy that he knows has his back and is going to push him in a direction. And we had this conversation with Carson Palmer about Matthew Stafford and Jim Bob Cooter in week 2. How important is it for the quarterback to feel that the coordinator has his back? They're in sync. We don't even have to really talk. When I come to the sideline, we're already, yeah, I got you. If you get the quarterback to that position, and that's where Dak is now, because he's got Wade Wilson, he's got Jason Garrett, he's got Scott Linehan,
yes.
He's got offensive minds that want to push him forward. And when you don't have that from a quarterback spot, Carson Palmer told us there's a number of guys that have made it to the NFL that were good players coming out of the college game that never reached that level in the NFL because the supporting cast, the coaching staff, the philosophy, all those critical pieces weren't there around them.
I know there's telling us. I need to say this. My good friend Chris Carter, I think, is not giving me credit for what I do know. Of course I know that the supporting cast matters. Of course I know that with the teams you won Super Bowls on, it was a collective effort. It was Nate Newton and Larry Allen, but it was also Troy and Emmett. It was also you and Michael Irvin. It was also Leon Lett. Of course I understand that. But that doesn't change the fact that special players are special. And that if I am looking at the Dallas Cowboys, I looked at the game last night. You're coming off a loss. I didn't think the offensive line was very good last night. I thought Zeke was hit before. He had more yards after contact than before contact. That wasn't a great game. It's a great unit.
Because the line was bad, Nick. They had 8 guys in the box. Zeke's biggest run, they had 8 guys in the box.
And he got hit and he made him and ended up getting 30 yards. I get that.
You can't block 8 guys.
CC, I understand, but there are great players. And you were one of them. And I understand that you say you were a system player, and I'm not going to say I know better about your career than you do. But I also know that there are guys that elevate their systems. And I think Dak's one of those guys. And because the other guys are more highly touted or highly regarded or highly drafted or highly paid, we act like he's a passenger on the ship rather than the leader of the ship. Doesn't mean other guys aren't rowing with him. I mean,
Can I ask you one question? Maybe this helps. Do you think Troy Aikman was an elite quarterback?
Yes.
There's a lot of people that were having the same conversation about Troy.
Absolutely.
When he was going into the Hall of Fame, I would have. He's not a first ballot Hall of Famer. Are you kidding me? I mean, the guy's 3 Super Bowls in a row, or 2 in 3 years, or 3 in 4 years, the first guy to do that. I mean, it's unbelievable. Well, his numbers aren't there. He doesn't have Hall of Fame numbers.
And he had a ton of help. But it doesn't change.
That's
how
why I'm saying there's very
was.
similar to this situation here. Now, I'm not saying Dak's going to be a Hall of Fame quarterback, but we're having that same conversation right now about him that a lot of people had about Troy because of the offensive line and Emmitt Smith.
And there's more to talk about in this game.
Johnston.
An hour into the show, we haven't even talked or even mentioned anything about Zeke's effort because there was no question. And 2, Des Bryant. So coming up, it's not all great in Dallas. There's one Cowboy who can't seem to get things going. That's next on First Things First.